People hear and read the phrase, what you desire already exists, and assume that it's some stupid spiritual optimism, as if the world is just a big warehouse and wanting something just puts it on hold for you. That reading and that thought process is shallow. I'll say it bluntly, it is shallow and it's illogical. What's more unsettling is the quieter interpretation, the more underlying response to it. Desire doesn't invent directions. What it does is reveals them. You don't want at random. You want along lines that are already laid down somewhere beneath conscious choice. Somewhere when you were a child and that teacher told you these things and your parents told you these things and the TV told you that. Now, Maxwell Maltz, the author, noticed this long before ever touching on the idea of mysticism. As a matter of fact, he never even touched upon mysticism. In his book, one of my favorite books, I'm still currently reading it, Psycho-Cybernetics, he treated the human mind as if it was some sort of guidance system instead of a wish machine. It's a mechanism that moves towards a target that it already recognizes as valid. You don't consciously calculate every correction while you walk. Instead, what you do is you move and you miss slightly and you adjust. And you do that over and over and over until everything is perfect. The system works precisely because of the fact that the error is not punished. The error is built upon. The error is used as data and information to train so that next time is better. Desire functions in the exact same way. It's not a demand. Instead, what it is simply feedback from a deeper orientation, a deeper machine built into your subconscious. And that's why real desire feels so different from fantasy. Fantasy is light. It's so disposable. You can swap it out whenever and wherever you want without any sort of consequences. Real desire, genuine passion for a goal, genuine actual desire for something that you need and want to attain is weightful. You know, it has weight in your life. I don't know if weightful is even a word, but what it does is persist. It irritates you every single day, and it doesn't just go away because you finally decided that it's inconvenient or unrealistic or you'll never achieve that. You can distract yourself from it, yes, and you can bury it under productivity or rational arguments, but what actual genuine desire does is continuously resurface, and it may be altered slightly, it may be dressed up in different language or different words, but it is still pointing in the exact same direction. And the persistence of that, in my opinion, is not poetic, but instead it's mechanical. It's the genuine machine built into you. Now, the author, again, Maxwell Maltz, argued that the self-image isn't something that you actually describe. It's instead something that you obey. It's something that everything you do is dictated by. The system doesn't move you towards what you want. Instead, what it does is move you towards what it already accepts as possible for someone like you. You know, that self-image that is so persistently talked about upon. That is why people can work endlessly towards goals and day in and day out and put in so much effort and still feel so stuck, still feel so burnt out. And it isn't because their desire was wrong. It's not because their goals were too big, but simply because their identity was running the system, even though that the identity refused to acknowledge the destination as legitimate. You know, the mechanism then compensated for that. What it did was miss on purpose, and it corrected away from what threatened the image that it was protecting. It's a bit scary when you put it like that, right? If you don't identify with a goal, then there's no chance you'll ever achieve it, because your own brain, the own pseudo mechanism in your mind will steer you away from it because it's scared that you're overachieving. Now, Nikola Tesla, I'm sure everyone knows who Nikola Tesla is, arrived at a similar understanding from an opposite end of spectrum. He did not treat imagination as a speculation. Instead, for him, internal construction wasn't rehearsal. It was reality in a different medium. Machines were built fully in the mind, and they were tested there, and they were refined there long before they ever existed in metal in his world. And it isn't because he believed in manifestation, but instead because coherence mattered so much more than his effort. If something could not exist internally without any contradiction, if something couldn't exist in his mind and coherently flow in his brain and function, then it never could succeed externally. It had no chance to. If it could, then the physical world was simply slower to catch up. That doesn't mean it was never made, but that means there was possibility for it to be made. That's why he would develop in his mind first. And that is, in my opinion, the part that so many people misunderstand about the story. Already exists is not an indication of it already being material. It only means that it is already structured. It already exists in the world. You just have to be the one to grab it and understand it. The pattern precedes the object, and desire doesn't need to be a plea to the future. Instead, it has to be a recognition of a trajectory that is already active. You may feel pulled towards a goal, towards something. You may desire something and feel magnified towards it because the system has already oriented itself around that. What has happened yet was not the wanting, but instead it was the permission to want that thing. And this reframes your failures and your unsuccessful attempts in a quite uncomfortable way for people to comprehend. Missing the mark is not evidence that the desire was naive. Instead, it's often evidence that something in you is actively resisting alignment with that desire and with that goal. The system keeps trying to correct, and you keep overriding the system with discipline, creating this negative feedback loop. It's motivation, it's logic, it's rationale that keeps you from becoming that machine, even though the machine keeps steering and keeps turning you back into the wrong direction. It mistakes your control for progress. Due to this, Maltz would then say that you're fighting that servo mechanism. Nikola Tesla would then say that you're building without actually resolving the internal design. Like I said, they both have similar thought patterns, just from kind of different ends. And that's why that forced desire collapses so quickly. Because you can convince yourself over and over that you want status, and you want security, and you want admiration, and you want success, and you want to achieve any goal, blah, 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 blah. You can tell yourself these things so much. And the motivation may take you a certain extent. But the issue is that motivation eventually fades when the pressure lifts off you. However, the issue stems from the fact that you cannot manufacture the kind of desire that is irritating and constantly demands from you and keeps returning without your consent. You cannot manufacture that in your mind. That desire is not chosen. Instead, what it is it's discovered through self-image. And once that desire is discovered, it becomes so difficult to pretend neutrally towards it. Your avoidance starts feeling active, and it feels like you're holding something down rather than simply waiting for it to come to you. If what you desire already exists as an internal structure, if what you desire already genuinely can succeed, then indecision is not passive. All it is intervention. You are not delaying the process. What you're doing is interrupting the process. And interruption comes with a cost. That's so obvious. The tension starts to accumulate over time, and the restlessness appears in your life without any clear object. You feel so pulled, yet you also feel stalled, both at the exact same time, because the system is receiving conflicting interests. One part of the system is telling you to walk that way, and the other part is telling you to walk that way. So what can the system do except walk straight or stop? It's telling you, move towards this, but do not become that kind of person for whom this is real. Do you hear how illogical that sounds? You cannot, like I said before, you cannot achieve something without self-image. And if you don't have the right self-image to move towards something, then the system won't move. That is where this idea of self-image stops becoming so comforting. It implies a sense of responsibility without ever guaranteeing any sort of outcome. You don't get any promises or assurances that the desire will resolve neatly. Instead, what you get is something harsher, a lot more raw, but a lot more comforting if you actually look at it, in my opinion. It's the knowledge that ignoring it is not neutral, and that clarity will demand change somewhere you would much rather not look. The work, in that sense then, is no longer chasing what you actually want or trying to believe harder. Instead, the work becomes refining the self-image and refining that actual image of yourself until it stops being noisy and starts being precise, until it starts locating the exact thing that you need, your exact desire, the deep-rooted desire that you've been born with. You have to understand what the desire is actually pointing to beneath all of the symbols and all of the fake stuff you've planted over it. Instead, you have to adjust the self-image so that the system no longer has to sabotage itself and no longer has to conflict itself to stay consistent with an outdated story. Now, Maxwell Maltz called this self-correction. Nikola Tesla called it self-alignment, or just alignment as a whole. Neither of them meant hope when they said these things. Instead, what they meant was honesty. Now, the core idea, the final thing I want you to take away from this is not that everything you want will appear just at your demand. It's that real desire is not an arbitrary thing, and treating it as such is just a way of staying divided against your own actual thoughts, against yourself. Once you see that, once you come to terms with that, and once you understand that, the question stops being, how do I get where I want, and instead becomes so much harder to ignore. It becomes, why have I been resisting something that has already been trying to take shape?